and gentlemen, greetings to you all. My name is Willy Wonka. I can see that.
Armed with nothing but a hat full of dreams, young chocolatier Willy Wonka manages to change the world, one delectable bite at a time. Or does he? Wonka is the third installment for the Willy Wonka franchise that released in 2023. Unlike the first two movies that focus on a grown-up Wonka with a successful magical chocolate factory, this one focuses on his early days as a chocolatier, his come-up.
I'm all the way up.
The film begins with Wonka singing a song about his dreams and goals while riding on top of a truck, and arrives to Europe where he wants to establish his chocolate business, but for some reason he gives all his money away to strangers and drops his last silver coin down a sewer drain.
Fucking dumbass.
Leaving him broke with nowhere to sleep but the freezing streets. This sketchy-looking guy named Bleacher then comes and offers to help him find a place to sleep at Mrs. Screwbit's boarding house. They then have him sign a contract to which Wonka happily signs without reading the small print because apparently he can't read, agreeing that he'll pay them for the help first thing in the morning. The next day, Wonka makes his way to the Gallery Gourmet and begins to sell the people some flying chocolate eggs that make you float when consumed. This gets the attention from three famous rival chocolatiers that tell him his chocolate is the worst. Suddenly they begin to float to space and die. This encourages others to buy some chocolate so that they can fly too. After a while, the police shows up and confiscate his earnings for selling without a chocolate store. Since his money was confiscated, he was unable to pay Mrs. Screwbit, causing his bill to jump to this ridiculous high amount of $10,000.
What?
Wonka is then captured and forced to work in a laundrette for Mrs. Screwbit alongside 5 other captives, including this young girl named Noodle. They were all apparently tricked into signing the contract and are unable to pay Mrs. Screwbit like around $10,000, so she's got them locked up working like slaves cleaning dirty underwear after a long day of working and singing. Wonka and Noodle begin talking about their misfortune, and Noodle tells Wonka that she's an orphan that was abandoned and found by Mrs. Screwbit in some dirty laundry, and that her debt is around $30,000. Wonka then offers to make her a chocolate in his little travel factory and tells her that his affinity for chocolate stems from his late mother. After making her a chocolate, he offers her a lifetime supply of chocolate if she helps him escape so that he can sell his chocolate, and Noodle agrees. Meanwhile, the rival chocolatiers hire the police chief to stop Wonka by all means and pay him off with chocolate.
What?
Later on, Wonka finally attempts his escape only to find out that his chocolate has been stolen by a little orange man, obviously referring to a Oompa Loompa. Apparently, Oompa Loompas have a vendetta against Wonka in this movie for stealing some cocoa beans from their island. They're also not your typical average Oompa Loompas. Like in previous movies, the Oompas in this movie are well-mannered and fancy.
Oh, you fancy, huh?
In order to make more chocolate, Wonka and Noodle travel to a local zoo to get some milk from a giraffe named Abigail. While milking Abigail, Noodle tells Wonka the origins of her name and shows him a pendant with the letter N. She claims that is the only thing she has from her real parents and how she wishes to know more about them. Wonka then pinky promises her that he is going to pay off her debt and help her find her real parents. After this touching moment, they begin to sing again and fly home while holding onto some balloons that they stole from the zoo. The next day, Wonka begins selling chocolate to the locals again and uses the sewer drainage tunnels to escape from the police. Apparently everybody loves Wonka's chocolate, and he starts making bank.
I'm rich, bitch!
That night, as Wonka is sleeping, a small Oompa Loompa enters his room and attempts to steal his chocolate, but Wonka captures him in a jar. The Oompa Loompa tells Wonka that his name is Lofty, and that he seeks retribution for the cocoa beans that Wonka unknowingly stole from Loompaland. As they come to an agreement, Wonka lets Lofty out of the jar only for him to smack Wonka with a pan and takes his chocolates. That morning, Noodle and the other captives surprise Wonka by purchasing the shop that he always wanted. Now he can be official and legally sell chocolate. The other rival chocolatiers are furious about this and plan to sabotage his business with the help of the now obese chief. One of the rival chocolatiers then goes and tells Mrs. Screwbit that Wonka has been sneaking out and selling chocolate and that Noodle is helping him.
You rat.
He asks Mrs. Screwbit to help him ruin their business. The next day, Wonka has his grand opening and we can finally see his chocolate factory. Everything seems to be going good as people are eating his chocolate and singing, But things take a dark turn as one of his customers begins to grow blue hair and another turns green. Wonka desperately tries to stop everybody from eating his chocolate, but it's too late. People begin to mutate, get mad, and destroy his store. It's later revealed that his rival chocolatiers poison his chocolate with Yeti sweat. His three rivals then offer Wonka a deal that they'll pay everybody's debt, but he has to leave town and never come back. Wonka obviously accepts the deal, being down on his luck, and they get him a one-way ticket on a ship to the North Pole for whatever reason.
What?
While silently sitting on the ship, Lofty shows up with this little fancy portable bar
You fancy, huh?
and tells Wonka that he shouldn't let them other chocolatiers push him around, to stand up for himself. Suddenly, Wonka finds out that Noodle is the niece of one of the rival chocolatiers because of a small imprint that was left on his hand after shaking Arthur's hand.
Okay.
He goes to tell the captain to turn the ship around, but finds that the ship is rigged with bombs and him and Lofty jump off the boat on the last second. We later find out that everybody that helped Wonka was allowed to leave Mrs. Screwbit's boarding house except Noodle. Arthur paid Mrs. Screwbit to keep her locked up forever. After Wonka rescues Noodle with the help of the group, they create a strategy to obtain the chocolatier's incriminating account book. Apparently, they keep every crime they commit written on a diary.
What?
They plan to break into the church where apparently the rival chocolatiers are using as a hideout by using Abigail to distract the priest, who is played by Mr. Bean. While in the underground bunker, Noodle accidentally finds their secret diary, but is soon confronted by the three chocolatiers who pull up with a strap.
Surprise, motherfucker!
Wonka then reveals that Arthur has a pendant that looks very similar to Noodle's. Arthur states that Noodle is his brother's daughter, but that he didn't want to have nothing to do with her because she is poor. And that's why he dumped her in Mrs. Screwbit's laundry chute. He also states that he told her mother, Dorothy, that Noodle is dead and gave her a few bucks to leave him alone. After revealing this, he locks both Wonka and Noodle inside a vault and attempts to drown them in chocolate, but are suddenly rescued by Lofty. After they escape the vault of chocolate, Wonka and Noodle take Arthur's diary to the cops and tells them all the illegal stuff that the three committed. As they're about to get arrested, they attempt to run away but begin to float, since earlier they ate a bunch of Wonka's flying egg chocolates, this time for real. The rival chocolatiers meet their downfall as they float away, and the police arrest the chief. Wonka later helps Noodle in reuniting with Dorothy at the library, settles his debt with Lofty, and finds an abandoned castle for sale to start building his own factory, with Lofty as his tasting chef. The movie ends on a happy note, with Wonka building his own magical chocolate factory and helping his friends pay off their debt to Mrs. Screwbit, who is arrested for her involvement in sabotaging Wonka's business, and Noodle finding her mother. The only thing I dislike from this film is the excessive singing and how they didn't use the young Willy Wonka from Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. Even with these flaws, the film is pretty enjoyable and entertaining. It has its emotional moments due to Noodle's backstory, but a lot of funny moments too, especially the chief becoming obese of chocolate. Also, the faces some characters make when eating Wonka's chocolate is hilarious. Watching this movie is worth it. I hope you guys enjoy this video. If you want to support me, like this video and subscribe. Also hit that bell icon for notifications every time I post. See y'all next time.